post this on YouTube afterwards if I can figure out how to overcome my technical challenges. But I am Mike Maurer. I am with Merchants Exchange. I represent the Julia Morgan Ballroom, the Merchants Exchange Club, and our restaurant Credo. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the San Francisco Unique Venue Alliance meeting. This is a group of unique venues in San Francisco that are not affiliated with hotels. And as you guys have known, we have had a quarterly meeting with an educational panel, which that part of it sort of went away in 2020. So I'm very excited in 2021 to bring back the educational aspect, and hopefully with it, as we go racing through the gates into events. And part of that is going to be how we handle, obviously, the COVID protocols and a way to be able to access with the city and such, and all of our guests in a safe manner. So I've asked a couple of folks together, Michael Douglas, Nancy with Paula LeDuc, and Dave, who just told us about his experience in regards to opening up an event that's going to open tomorrow. So I would like to open the floor with these three folks. Each one of them, David, Michael, and Nancy, will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and give you a little bit of their background. And then we're going to go into a number of different questions and answers. Hopefully it will be an interactive experience here. So why don't we open the floor with Nancy. If you can go ahead and take the floor and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure, gladly. Thanks for having me, Mike, and Dave and Michael. I'm looking forward to joining the two of you on the panel today. My name is Nancy Parrague Barkley. I work for Paula LeDuc Fine Catering and Events. I'm the director of sales there. I've been with the company for about 9 years, and I have always been on the sales team. I was an account executive and kind of rose through that program. And January 1st of 2020, was promoted to the director of sales position. And it has been a very interesting year to be in that position, as I'm sure you all can imagine. So that's, we've been navigating this like many of you, weeks at a time, days at a time, and, just putting one foot in front of the other and getting a little further along. So looking forward to having this discussion today and hearing about what's going on with everyone, and hopefully we can lean on one another for some, guidance over the next couple of months, because I do think it's going to get busy quickly.
All right, and then David.
Still a challenge after all these months of Zoom meetings to find that unmute button. So I'm Dave with NPU. I've been in the business for about 25 years. I've done everything you can imagine in the events industry. And I'm a little foggy. I went for my vaccine, my first shot today, which was a little emo for me, I gotta say. Just really gave me some time to reflect on the last 12 months. Thinking about all of you and how affected all of us were, just across the board, right? I know it's been really, really challenging for everybody. I think everybody in this room today has had to pivot their business in one way or another. I know we certainly have, and I've stretched my imagination beyond ways I never thought I would have to in what I do for this business here. So I'm going to try and keep my thoughts together, but this whole thing has been challenging. It's been challenging. So, but I'm excited to get the discussion started with COVID safety and whatnot. But bounce it over to Mike, and then we can just jump in with, Mike, whatever you'd like to go with.
All right,
Sure, Dave.
Mike.
So again, Mike Douglas with Hensley Event Resources. We're a full-featured rental company that focuses on customization and production. Do a lot of tenting. That's really my main focus in the company. Our friends from Paula LeDuc know Sue and Susan well. Their big focus is tabletop and under the tent. And they keep me busy with all the big production stuff, and absolutely love it. So, as Dave said, things have been different. I want to retire the pivot word really soon, if we can. It started last year, 2020, to be a banner year, and of course, as everybody has experienced, the breaks hit about the same time last year. And early on, even though our furnishings business was decimated, we started getting calls from hospitals and started reaching out to hospitals to see what we could do to help with testing, triage, the emergency tenting, that type of thing. And we were pretty successful for the first 3 months, outfitting most of the hospitals in the Bay Area with tenting. Went through county services, and then around the middle of summer, things changed a little bit. Hotels, got a number of calls from hotels, card rooms. As Dave mentioned, we have a couple of large casino tents that we built, and then restaurants. We started doing parklet tenting, parking lot tenting, wherever restaurants were located throughout the Bay Area, whether they're in a shopping center, a mini mall, what have you, working to get them at least partially back in business. So yeah, things have changed quite a bit in the last year. And within the last month or so, we've got a good head of steam heading into late spring, early summer with weddings. Lots of quotes, lots of site visits, some virtual, some actual. And things are looking up. Looks like our furnishings business is going to build back. Looks like our staffing is going to be able to build back. We're at about 20% staffing right now. So we'll be able to hire back, hopefully, some of the talent that we had before. We were in a blessed position of having long-term employees. Mike Hensley started the company back in 79. And we still have some employees that started with him early on in the early 80s. So a lot of skilled workers, some of which stayed on, some of which furloughed, but we're hoping to get them back. And we're here to service you, whatever your needs are. Even if it's unusual, bounce it by us. Let's see if we can help you.
All righty, and thank you. And in regards to health and safety, I mean, more so lately, what are some of the challenges, Michael, that you've had since you're in the field, putting up tents and such, and what are some of the protocols that you've been asked to follow?
Yeah, the real trick is there's no good guidance from state, local, county. It varies by location. Often in the tenting business, the local fire marshal is the responsible party that comes in and inspects our tents. And they're not a health official, so it's not their job really to check on those things. But with tenting, making sure there's airflow, proper airflow in the tenting. We've got at least half the sidewalls open, and that there's ample distance between tables. What is unique are the variables that are required for us to figure out really how to do restaurant seating, which is different than maybe a hotel seating. And the reason for that is family groupings, right? You want to keep bubbles together. So my clients are reaching out and asking me for advice, and I really don't have all the answers. All I can do is, check with their local officials and use logic, try to figure out how to seat properly, how to keep airflow through our tents. So it's tricky.
All right, well, thank you. And then David, with your exhibit opening tomorrow, what are some of the things that you've had to overcome or that you can share with us?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I had to overcome was the 2 months I spent reading all the health directives and trying to figure out which one to go with to launch this event. That was really, really intense. And we ended up actually going under a museum directive. This show is really art driven. It's the Van Gogh experience, floor to ceiling projections. You know, and they've got some really great guidelines, right, that are available to all of us. And going under the museum directive with the health and safety plan, it's good guidance. It's very thorough. It's very descriptive. But I took it a step further. We added some of our own measurements that we wanted to do, including, you know, disinfecting the venue 3 times a day, but not only doing it with disinfectant, but also doing it with UV as well. So the thing with UVC is you have to wipe down all the surfaces or all the surfaces of things, and then you have to go a wipe over again with this UVC lighting. So, and that was just an extra precaution that we decided to take. You know, I think what also was challenging was there are no, and it's clearly stated, there are no approval processes, right? I mean, you send a health and safety plan up to the city attorney, and then you send it over to the Department of Health, and there's nobody saying, great, you're good, go for it, right? Which in one aspect is fine. In the other, it was, you know, I was hoping for some kind of go, right? I mean, we've spoken with the Entertainment Commission. I mean, and it's funny to see how slow city government has really slowed down during this time, right? To whether it's health department, building department, whatever department you're working with. Fire has always been really quick with stuff, but other departments seem to have kind of slowed their roll and actually not communicating during any of the time that we were in our stay-at-home order and our shutdown. So it really was, you know, and I think about outside the box with this, you know, we just went from, you all know this, we went from purple to red, and we were allowed a 25% capacity. And the advantage that I have over a lot of spaces is that I've got a lot of square footage in all of our venues. And this was the perfect fit for this event here. But in speaking with the producers, I was insistent that, we're ticket sale driven, right? I was insistent that we didn't reach that 25% mark. As people are just coming out of this thing, I felt a responsibility to, I guess, ease people's mind a bit and take that from 25% down to 15% of what our actual capacity could be and all the square footage that we're using here at SVN. Because I didn't want people to freak out. I want, you know, part of the job is to get people comfortable and relaxed to coming back to live events. You know, so I really took that into consideration when I spoke with the producers, because they're like, yeah, 25%, and then we go to Orange, we're going to be 50%, more tickets. I was like, hold on a minute. You know, as the venue operator, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I said, we're just coming back. You know, like Ralph Remington from the San Francisco Arts Commission was here the other night and made one of the, and I've got goosebumps thinking about it because he made such an amazing speech. You know, it was inspiring. It was, you know, clearly coming from a place of love of the arts, that how fantastic it was that San Francisco was going to be able to experience this event. But my primary objective through this whole process was to come from a place where people felt extra secure. So, you know, plexiglass everywhere, of course, and you all know this, right? We've got the hand sanitizing stations, and our staff are wearing gloves, and I've got one person going up the main staircase every 5 minutes, you know, washing, you know, wiping down that handrail if somebody touches it. It's we've kind of gone, I've kind of probably gone a little bit overboard. And it's funny, you know, Amy, I was thinking of you from the Exploratorium, and I was going, oh my God, talk about touch points. Wow, right? Yeah. So you came into my mind this morning as I was coming into this panel discussion. I was like, oh, I think I got it. It's like Amy's got, touch points galore over there. So, and let's, I want to hit on staffing too, right? We're not at regular staffing. We have upped our staff. I mean, the exhibit folks here have brought on, they've got 35 people working each hour or throughout the day. So, this pandemic has really put us in a place where, and even from a client perspective, when you think about it, the staffing costs are doubled because you need to have those safety factors in place. So
we'll come back to the staffing issue in a little bit here. And then we'll get back to questions after we'll get Nancy's perspective on this, and then we'll do a round of questions or any Q&A on this particular before we move on. Nancy?
Sure. Yeah, so speaking to just safety, I think as we've all found throughout the last year, the guidelines and the indicators of what we should be doing are ever changing and a little bit hard to pinpoint. So one of the things that we did in the first few weeks is we put together an internal COVID compliance team. So a team that would get the information that was available to us, distill it, and have it available for our review. And we've been doing that throughout the last year. And I think it's been really helpful for us to have that team in place so we know what we can and can't do. And it's also going to be really helpful to have them in place for moving forward as we get back to doing events. We've done very few live events in the last year. As a company, we've been following the county guidelines. So if a county says that you can, and that's shifted, as we all know, through the last year. So we were able to do a couple of events in San Mateo County, but not in Napa County, where we have an exclusive venue. So as a company, we've been following those guidelines on gatherings and tracking them, which is really been a challenge. And then in terms of the events that we have been doing, primarily outdoors or all outdoor over the summer. In the fall, we really didn't do very much. We kind of started to do some experiences, shipping experiences, which I think a lot of people adjusted to doing. And we also did some meals for the community, which was a great opportunity for us. And those were the things that kind of kept us going and busy throughout the fall, late summer, fall, and winter. When we were looking at the events, and I think this will apply to all of us when it comes to safety, is the layouts, which we may talk a little bit more about, Mike, but the layout, and Dave touched upon this, the staff and the need for space. So, typically if a venue has a certain capacity and you're assuming that's 25% of the guest count, you also have to take into account all of the people that are going to be on site. And as a caterer, John knows this, we bring the most humans with us. So, if it's 25% capacity, or if the guidelines say you can gather with 50 and we have 15 to 20 vendors, what does that look like? So I know we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I do think when thinking about capacities and the spaces, as we get back to doing events, we're going to need the guest space, certainly, but now more than ever, we actually need more space for vendors so people can be distanced and have appropriate space. So I think that's going to be coming into play for all of us as we get back to things too.
That is an excellent point. We'll open this up now for questions on this particular thing. If anybody has questions about this segment here. Max, did you have a question?
Thanks, Mike. It was something somebody had said earlier about just the restrictions on the space, and I don't know if it fits in this segment or later, but I guess the overall question that partners and vendors that I've been talking to are kind of wondering is, when will demand kind of reach to where it was before, as we're preparing for limited size events and kind of getting people back into spaces and getting ready for for accommodating that, when are the businesses actually going to be reaching back out again? When are we going to see the same sorts of demand for 200-person parties? So it sounds like, just from what I've heard so far, that weddings are still popular year round and people are excited to get those back underway. But when it comes to maybe larger corporate events or 200 hotel room block bookings, is that something that we can start planning for 18 months from now or 6 months from now? Like, I'm just kind of curious where people are from that perspective. And if that doesn't quite relate to the intention of this segment, I'm happy to hear an answer to that later as well.
Anybody want to jump in on that one, Nancy?
Sure. I think when we, and many of you may be finding this as well, I think social events and weddings certainly are eager to happen whenever they can. People are really looking forward to the opportunity to gather and have their wedding or social event. And those are most of the calls and events that we have on the calendar for 2020, 2021. And as Mike mentioned, it looks like a busy season, or as Michael mentioned, it looks like a busy season for the summer and the fall for those types of weddings. When it comes to corporate, we have, I'm anticipating that by June or August, we may start hearing from more corporate clients. I'm sure some of the DMC folks could speak to this as well, but I think with all of the large tech companies saying that you're really not back into the office until August, many of them, I don't know that they're going to be planning at live events. I don't know that discussion is going to start until later in the summer.
Thank you. That closely aligns with what I've been tracking, but I know there's a lot of diversity on the call here and representing different parts of the events industry. And I think recovery is going to impact people in different ways, depending on what kinds of events, and especially even what size of events. Like there might be 200-person venues that can't do more than 50 people for another 8 or 9 months, just because of corporate policies that supersede, what maybe local health officials are looking at too. So
Are there other questions that would like to jump into now, or continue with the panel? If anyone would like to ask questions, just jump right in.
I have a question, and this is kind of for everybody. I'm wondering, as I think it was Michael Douglas who said that you're hating the word pivot, but as we've tried to kind of evolve, as someone said, I'm wondering what practices you think we will just keep as part of our normal. I mean, we've all had to adjust in ways that we probably never thought we would ever be able to do, and we've done it. And I'm just wondering, this is kind of an open question, and kind of like Max, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for it, but I'm wondering which practices we'll kind of keep, ongoing, and just kind of throwing that out there. And if this isn't the right time, certainly happy to listen for later, but it'll be interesting to see which of those practices we've incorporated just as part of our daily life during COVID we continue to keep as we move past this.
Samantha, I'll jump in. We instituted, obviously, when our employees came back into our warehouse, strict protocols, but also on our dishware. We have a marking system that shows that things have been, hygiene has been looked at, and things have been packed properly, signed off by multiple employees, and certified. That's something that we've always done, but not had a formal process of. So that's something we'll continue for sure.
I can jump in also. I do believe that we're going to still wear masks for a while, to be honest, even when we reopen. I think those masks will be still mandatory for a lot of things for the next year, I think a year and a half. I do believe that. I do believe also that office work will change. A lot of remote from work. We just realized that a lot of people can work from home and not having to be back in offices and make it happen. So certainly the footprint of the offices is going to be reduced or reinvented. I see that with us. And also, on the sick days, we're not going to joke around with that. If you feel sick, you stay at home. And that's something that already we put in place. For sure. And one thing that I know that I've noticed, I've been doing a lot of virtual events for my clients, and I know this is also a new product that will be here for us to stay, because we have even requests beyond the regular years of offices in Europe or Asia reaching out to us to do a presentation for them in an audience we never reached before. So I think for me, those are the things that might stay for a while, that we created a brand new product and a new job. And like Pat said, video producing and shooting is like a brand new business that we all in now, that we need to be on top of it. So.
Thank you, Christophe. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess one of my questions is, we're doing events and are doing them in different counties that we're still compliant with county guidelines, and we have clients that are pull us into different counties where it makes sense. Once we step foot back into venues, one of my biggest concerns is that in a private event space, we're now marshaling guests on, safety protocols. So if we step back into venues, does that, is it collaborative? Do we have to have a task force that is reminding people about social distancing or wearing masks in between food and beverage service? And then how are we all going to be on the same, wavelength or team to divide and conquer that? Because the reality is, with a private event where there isn't a marshaling service or rules that usually are supplied by the venue, we've done stuff that I don't feel necessarily good about doing, just because it seemed a little bit too big for me. But because it's somebody's private space, they don't feel like they have to follow any sort of rules. So that becomes something, once I come back into venues, how are we going to manage the guests with this sort of stuff?
Oh, I have just a comment on that. We have at the Outdoor Art Club, in anticipation of weddings, several of the brides are indicating that they're going to require their guests to show that they've been vaccinated in order to attend. So that eliminates that whole social distance, the policing of the crowd, which they did not want to get into. And that would be a way, if they have to call their invitation list, they will, but they felt that was the only way that they would feel comfortable safely moving forward, because it didn't feel comfortable. And also with those numbers about catering, that there's how many people do you have to slice off your invitation list if you're counting all of the vendors that are and caterer staff that are there, if everybody is not vaccinated. So that's a big driver from our end.
Dave, did you want to jump in here as a venue owner about how that would happen? I think the vaccination, requiring a vaccination is requiring them to be trustful that it's actually happening, and they could be fake and legal issues and all that. But back to the question of how venues would police themselves.
So I will tell you that I've gotten several corporate events inquiries coming over the last couple of weeks. So I'm seeing an uptick there, which is kind of a nice thing, because for many weeks it was flat, right? So, with this particular client for the show that I'm currently in, I went to them and I said, this has got to be a mutual agreement. Again, we're back to that whole staffing thing, right? We have enough staff here on site that are, if you will, I'll use the word policing or managing, right? So that if we see people that are wandering too close from each other, we're reminding them, that social distancing is in order here. I mean, clearly nobody is allowed in without a mask, all of that stuff. I've recently been working with a company that has the latest technology in COVID testing, and the test swabs come back in 3 minutes. But it measures at the rate as if you were to take a nasal swab and send it back for all the programmables that they need, but it comes back immediately in 3 minutes. So there will be clients that will be interested in that type of necessity too. These guys bring in their own medical team, they bring in their own staff. all their PPE, everything. So, you know, there's clients, we know that there's clients out there that have some big budgets, right? That don't mind kind of paying for this stuff. So you can have everybody tested, set up several holding areas as people are brought in, tested, and then have the results in 3 minutes, which is kind of a neat thing. I just started having these conversations with one of my clients. But I think ultimately it really comes down to the venue and the client having a full understanding and a contractual agreement that this is being managed together, right? Safety is, I know for all of us here, safety is the #1 factor when we go into an event. It's the first thing that we look at. We don't look at the dollar signs, we look at the safety factor, right? So it's really getting those clients in line. You know, and John, I hear you, for a private event, it's a little bit different. But as we start moving into those corporate clients, those agreements, and we've been looking at this, have got to be made. And the biggest thing that's freaking clients out right now is the whole insurance aspect. Nobody wants the liability. Nobody wants the liability. So we've had to do some legal work on that end as well.
And for us, Mike, our security have guidelines to actually tell guests if they're not wearing a mask properly. You know, if the mask is right here, so, you know, you have to cover your nose. We have our staff have been trained. I have been trained. Every staff of the academy on the main floor, seeing anybody who's not doing the right thing, we tell the guests once, twice. And after, if they don't respond, then we call security, our security, and they will escort them out. So this should apply as well for our events. But for the film crew that I worked with, they have their own, like Pat says, COVID officer on premises that on top of our security have their own officer on the job that will secure their safety. So to respond to you, John, I think between the caterer and the venue, we will do new guidelines between the caterers and the venue of what we expect from your staff to do, you know, wearing the mask or whatever, and then we'll follow your guidance, or you tell us, oh, this is what we do. And I think it's a talk to have before when you do a site visit, logistics, that would work, I think.
I think we just have a new line item there, the COVID compliance officer as a staffing line there. Nancy, with the COVID compliance team, what have they kind of come up with in regards to staffing before and now after? We had some guidelines in regards to how many staff you might need for a 100-person event. What are they recommending now?
Well, you know, I think in the chat, I saw someone ask a question about service, and John mentioned again, you know, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, which it is, because right now our staffing guidelines really haven't changed. If anything, we might have more staff on site in order to execute a certain type of event. For example, if someone doesn't want to do a served meal and they'd like to do a buffet meal, we would have a chef composing a plate and handing it to someone. We're not doing those sorts of stations, and I don't foresee that happening, you know, in the near future. So it is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because we're either having the same kind of staffing guidelines that we had historically, or there's a chance that we would increase them slightly depending on the type of service needed.
And then, Michael, do you, in terms of the installation and some of the other, are you also finding that your staffing levels have been increased from previous times?
No, they're the same, although now we require the client to disinfect the tent if it's in a hospital type setting prior to us picking it up, that type of thing. So the work that we do is basically the same. And, you know, as we get back into production with other vendors, working with other vendors, we're going to want to make sure that they're following the same protocols that we are. So during vendor meetings, that type of thing, it's important that everybody's on the same page. One of the things I keep thinking about, I'm thinking about weddings this summer, and COVID compliance, or COVID cop, is what it's going to wind up being. There's going to be somebody around making sure everybody's following the rule. But there are a lot of unknowns, like queuing for a bar. You have to keep everybody 6 feet apart. With weddings, certainly you've got family groups, right? So you've got these little mini bubbles that can be seated separately. But dancing, is it going to be like a Catholic school, middle school dance with, somebody room for Jesus in between, or how's that going to work? There's a lot of unknowns. It's the wild, wild west of events coming up this summer, and I think it's important that that these protocols are developed, that they're followed, and that they're policed to make sure that everybody is safe and stays healthy.
Those folks that were on earlier that were seeking employment, I think COVID compliance officer is going to be highly coveted in the summertime. But David, can you speak to some of the staffing that that you currently have in the next few weeks versus what we had a year ago?
As far as the numbers?
Okay, yeah, correct. So if this was a year ago, are you doubled the staff, or what might be the?
We're doubled, if not a little bit more. Over. We, excuse me. We have a COVID compliance officer on site, and we will continue to have one on site for every event moving forward. We have support documentation. When you talk about the vendors, right? When we have multiple vendors coming on site moving forward, we've drafted a document that they are to adhere to all the things that are necessary. We're doing the temperature checks as people come in. We're trying to schedule vendors away from each other so we don't have two vendors in at the same time, right? So it's scheduling out, getting trucks and vendors in at different times. And it's been a new way of thinking, but absolutely, we've probably almost tripled our staffing, for sure. I would not have these many people on site. Right now we're approximately taking about 110 people per hour per show. The venue's disinfected 3 times a day. But it was necessary, as I was talking to the producers, that they had all these people in place because, and the bottom line is it comes down to policing, right? Just making sure people are staying away from each other. And for the most part, from what I've seen so far, I mean, we'll see what it looks like when we open to the general public tomorrow. We start doing these larger numbers. I mean, my largest number for each show with the VIPs and the press this week has been right around 70 people. So, as we're averaging up to, 110 people per show, running every hour for 8 hours a day or whatever it is, with breaks in the middle to clean. It'll be interesting to see how that all works, but there's plenty of staff here to remind people to keep their social distancing, for sure.
Terrific. And then Nancy?
I was just going to kind of tag on to something that Dave has kind of just spoken about, and Michael, you might have experienced this as well. But I think also, not in regards to the amount of staff on site, not only that, but also the time it takes to do something is going to take a little bit longer. Everything kind of has to come down, and people have to move slowly and safely and really strategically. And I think that will be something that is going to be taken into account as we get back to doing events and things are busier again. We're all going to need a little bit more time to make sure that these practices are being followed.
Thank you. And it seems like we're morphing right into the cleaning and disinfecting issue. Now, can you speak to any of Nancy, any of again, going back to the COVID compliance team on what they're recommending from silverware to table settings to any of those type of questions?
Sure. We have internal processes. We have a kitchen. A kitchen is always very strict in terms of cleanliness and those protocols. But at all of our buildings, we have implemented a sign-in, a waiver that you sign, kind of as Christoph was mentioning. I'm going to look into that envoy that I think that's what you mentioned, because we have we have a sign-in document, sanitation, temperature check whenever anyone is accessing any of our facilities or buildings. And then when it comes to being on site, we're starting to talk about that. And I think it's going to be, for catering staff, one of the biggest risk pieces is going to be kind of the handling of glassware and dishware that has been used. So the busing. So we will, we have a whole station that we've set up that will be mobile, that will go from event to event, that has equipment, safety equipment for our staff to have on site and be wearing when they're doing any sort of service, and especially with busing as well.
Thank you. And then Michael, you had spoke that about asking the client to disinfect the tent in between uses. Is there any other specialized cleaning or disinfecting that you can speak to?
No, primarily it was for our hospital clients that did testing early on, and we'd run a lot of patients through triage that were exhibiting COVID symptoms. So that's what we were most concerned about. I mean, obviously ultraviolet light shining on tents, if they're sitting out there for quite some time, does a good job. It's nature's disinfectant. But any equipment that we're bringing back, tables, chairs, that type of thing, undergo thorough cleaning by our staff when it comes back to our warehouse and is checked off prior to getting on the next truck.
Thank you. And then David, the question I think came, you let 110 folks in to the event and then they clear out after a period of time, 90 minutes or an hour, 2 hours or something. And then what sort of cleaning or disinfectant occurs at that point?
So I want to clarify, they actually don't clear out. We have so much square footage here that, so we allow 110 people into the gallery space. People can come and go. We have clickers going in and out. There are socially distant circles that are put on the gallery floor that are projected on the gallery floor. We have some seating elements in those circles too, these little benches. So there's enough staff working that gallery floor that if people sit down and they get up, that bench is disinfected immediately. It's quite a it's quite a process to watch, to see how surfaces, even the railings in the center of the ballroom, we have a structure that goes up. I think it's 16 by 16. We allow 8 people up there at a time, socially distanced. If people, people are touching those hand railings. Every time somebody passes by something, we've got somebody wiping something down. That's what I was saying about increasing staffing threefold, right? That's really what, and Amy, I was thinking about, I told you that this morning, I was thinking, talk about touch points, right? And this is just really what it's taking right now to get events off the ground. And I'm thinking about the industry as a whole, and speaking with a lot of people. I'm involved in the Events Industry Executive Alliance, as well as some folks with the California Association of Planned Events. As we're moving forward, we're thinking about catering, we're thinking about all aspects, right? And catering, single serving, a lot of single serving happening, right? And I think from a client perspective, you're going to see that in demand more and more. That's what they're going to want to see. We know buffet stations are not going to come back for a while. And there's the challenge for the caterer, right? Because we all know what beautiful work you guys do and what beautiful presentation you do. And how do you take that and make it into single-use servings, right? Clearly it could be done. I've seen you do it, but it's got to be done in a different way. So the whole thought process of how we're working now, everything needs to really, really be invented and thought out to a point where it almost gives you a headache, if you will. Right? I know I've gotten a few of those, so yeah.
Can I hop in? Just
Please.
So Dave, like hearing your story and like knowing you're opening tomorrow, it takes me back to 8 years ago when we were getting ready to open our doors at the Piers, and I can just feel the place you're in right now. So congratulations truly on all the work that's gone into this. So I look forward to checking it out. I'm really impressed by all the everything you put into that. Yeah, I feel you. So congratulations. For the Exploratorium site, just to share, like, yes, this is hands-on museum. That's what we're known for. That's what's so great about the Exploratorium. And that's really tough place to be in. And that's one of the reasons why we're not open right now. It's like, we want to make sure we're open when people want to come. And, you know, so we've actually removed about a third or so of the exhibits off of our floor, because there are some on there, like there's one called the Bronx Cheer Bowl where you actually blow raspberries. Like, that's the exhibit, is you sitting there going, you know, so that's not like very COVID friendly, you know. So we've taken a lot of those types of exhibits off the floor and really focused on, you know, there's still a lot of physics and art and pieces that you can really appreciate without being quite so hands-on. And I think I also take heart with the fact that like fomite transmission is shown to be not as much of the main transmission of COVID, that it's much more about aerosol. And we've got like our HVAC system is actually constantly bringing in new air. So I think for us, it'll be a lot about educating people out there, like, hey, you know, yes, we are known as the Exploratorium, the hands-on museum, but there's a lot of fun things you can do that are really, you know, in a safe place at our museum. And like this 2-person event we did, you know, 2 people, 1 household, you can wipe everything down in between. It's not a problem. So I look forward to scaling that up, but it's a perception. It's going to be a perception challenge for sure. Yeah.
All right, we can open up the floor for questions on the staffing or cleaning and disinfecting and such. If anyone has questions, just jump right in.
Hi, this is Rachel. I think my question is a little bit more on the frequency of the cleaning, not so much right after somebody, but those big massive cleanings and how much time you're allowing after you do it, whether it's electrostatic or some other format of it. And does that mean that you have to go dark for a day, or do you have to staff extra hours in the evening to allow for that, and kind of what you're working through?
I'm going to think that's probably directed to me. So we go dark for an hour each day. The venue is static and also as well spray disinfected each morning as well as each night. So 3 times a day we're at it. And that's really on top of you know, everybody wiping down surfaces all the time. We're not using all our bathrooms. I have 30 restrooms upstairs. We got every other one blocked off, you know, so all those handles are wiped down. Anytime there's bathroom attendants, anytime somebody hits we have a communal faucet. So every time somebody hits one of those faucets to go wash their hands, every other one of those is blocked off. We've got a staff member on it wiping it down. So, yeah, the cleaning aspect is really, really key. I've never felt cleaner in my life, to tell you the truth, or safer in my life. So yeah, yeah. So roughly 3 times a day on the volume that we're doing. And then of course our HVAC is pulling in fresh air every 45 seconds. The HVAC component was super, super intense to install and get that to a level where it's not disrupting the show, because it's pulling air into the ballroom and then blowing it out as well. Yeah, a lot of headaches with this thing. A lot of factors came into it to really, really, really dial it in and think about it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a details person, so I want to dive deeper with you maybe offline, but I appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other questions out there?
I have a question. It's Miley. It was based on Judy's comment in Marin, and you said that your client was going to require their guests to have the vaccination. Would your employees be required to get the vaccination? There's been some chatter with Exploratorium employees, like a debate, open forum with all of our employees, and to vaccinate, to not vaccinate, to require, to not require. So I'm just interested in hearing other venues, but I know that Judy mentioned it as well. So I'm just interested in hearing what others have to say.
Our venue's small, so the people that we have on staff have already been vaccinated, so that's taken care of. But they would require any vendors, the caterers and their staff and their guests, anybody that would be on site. That's the requirement that these renters are trying to tee up at this point. We'll see if it actually plays out. The first events that we'll have is not until mid-June. Everybody else has rescheduled. They're not willing to take the chance, nor are there caterers who are not committing at this point.
Christoph?
For us, we have already had all of our biologists vaccinated, all of them, in order to work the floor and everything. So we don't require it. I'm not quite sure yet what our legal team is going to do, but they give the option of people to get vaccinated. So part of the employees, yes. Clients already brought that up to me saying, okay, well, we might have events where we require that. I don't know what legally we can do. We cannot force any of our employees to get the vaccine if they don't want to. So so they, but that's something that we are exploring right now, like, everywhere else. So it's kind of, so we don't know.
Amy, do you want to answer that?
Well, I'm probably in the same position, that Miley's representing there. So, we have great advice from our senior scientists on staff, certainly. And, there was a debate if we fit in the education component or not, that's currently being vaccinated. And so the Exploratorium said, we're not saying we want to cut ahead of the teachers or anything like that. It's up to everybody in their own individual circumstances. But I think our scientists are individually advising us that it's a good idea to get vaccinated if you can.
Thank you. Any other venue leaders that would like to jump in about their employees and whether they would insist they would get vaccinated? And then David, what about your non-Van Gogh exhibit folks in your other spaces?
So I think vaccination is an individual choice, right? And this is just my opinion and my belief. I don't think we would ever, right? And this is actually a really good question that's come up, right? I think that our company would take the narrative of not forcing that, because there are people that just don't believe in vaccination, or they may be scared of it, right? And I have to respect those people's opinion too. I don't know what I would do with a client that would tell me that was mandatory. I would say, appreciate you coming to us with your business, but unfortunately I can't make that happen for you. I have to be mindful of individual's choice, right? So thanks for giving me something else to think about.
It is an interesting hypothetical that we will now pose to Nancy and then Michael.
Well, we're navigating the same thing that, Christoph mentioned. Our legal team is reviewing it because this is, like many things that we're experiencing with COVID, a new territory for us. What can you require of your staff? And, Dave, you said it too, you can't necessarily make that requirement. So we're navigating that. We had the opportunity to possibly navigate it a little sooner because food and agriculture workers were able to get vaccinated. And so that came up pretty quickly for us. And our sense is that you really can't require it as a company, but we are reviewing it with legal as well.
Michael?
Yeah, I think we'll deal with that when it hits us. We're not necessarily guest facing. We come in, do our work, kiss on the cheek, we're out the door, we come back and pick up. But certainly for the requirements of the venue that would ask that all of Hensley's employees be vaccinated, I'm sure we'd have enough folks that are vaccinated that would be able to deploy to that job. So we could, have somebody who's not vaccinated move off to another task. But it's a individual issue and we'll deal with it when it pops up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have an afterthought on that. I understand we're all here and a little bit, we've just come through 12 months of shell shock, right? It's this whole thing has been really a shell shock, right? We're all having to, what was the word used? Evolve, is that instead of pivot? Evolve into different ways of thinking. But I want to pose something to everyone. We're here now, we're about to move into orange, and we're talking about what it's going to look like moving forward. We know how fast this thing has moved and how fast policies changed and rules changed, techniques have changed. I'll be an optimist, but I would love to see at the end of the year, us back to almost 100% normalcy. That's a possibility. We can't negate that as not being a possibility. That's an absolute possibility. We have a new administration, right, who's calling for 100% vaccination by May, whatever the date is. So we may find ourselves pleasantly surprised as we get through summer and leading into fall. And again, it's Dave Peterson being the optimist, right? Maybe we'll find ourselves in a really good place where we can, I think safety factors will still need to be in place, but I would like to believe by the end of the year, we're looking at some kind of normalcy and we won't have to be having these conversations.
I like that. That is a great way to finish this up with a positive note. I too am optimistic that things will move forward. I appreciate everyone's time. And if we have any burning desire here to ask any questions or anything else, we can stay on afterwards, but we'll wrap this up here. There will be another UVA event coming in the near future.
Mike?
Next month. Yes.
It's Chelsea with the Marin Venue Alliance. And I just wanted to say hi and invite you all to our Venue Alliance meeting on Friday at 9 a.m. I'm not too sure if Melinda's already clued you in. We are meeting with a county representative to help